Welcome back, everybody, to the Beverage Podcast Bar Talk. Thanks for joining us for episode 7. I'm John Foley, your host, along with Mark Miller.
Hello.
Booms.
Hi there.
Yes, and we would like to, of course, as always, thank our partners and team at iLogic Media for producing the show and broadcasting us to your living rooms and couches and cars and showers.
Planes, trains, and automobiles.
Exactly, yes. So today we're talking about something that's kind of near and dear to our hearts, and I think that everybody who gets into beverages eventually starts buying books to read and enhance their experience, maybe to learn more about favorite subject matter. So we're talking about essential bar books today, the ones that we really like, the ones that help us out as industry members, and the ones that are the most fun to read.
Yeah.
And have the best recipes.
Certainly.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't think anybody ever kind of can have a conversation about beverage books without mentioning Jerry Thomas.
Oh, yeah.
Because Jerry Thomas essentially was the one who broke the rules first and wrote a bar book, because at the time he did it in the 70s, it was kind of not that cool to write a bar book. You know, the idea is that your recipes were proprietary and you didn't share them. But he kind of wrote a book that was equal parts self-promotion and recipes. And he kind of was the first one to put drinks into families.
Yeah.
You know, so you kind of learned through that book what original families were for, like sours and slings and daisies. And it's a really, really fantastic book. The Bon Vivant's Companion is the name of it. And we don't have it. I went to pull it and I got a pile of books in front of me and I blew it. I don't know where the copy is.
It's gone.
Probably in the back of my car.
Yeah.
So that one and this guy right here, the Savoy Cocktail Book, which was originally published in, I'm going to say 1923. See if I'm right.
Drum roll.
1930. Either way, seminal cocktail book. This one's even bigger than the Jerry Thomas book with much more recipes. And it's kind of one of those books where a lot of the classic cocktails that we know now, pre-Prohibition era cocktails that we know now, they got their first mention in this particular book. So it was the bar book for the Savoy Hotel. And a lot of the great bars at the time were hotel bars, because that's where you had an influx of people who were culturally interested in cocktails. The best bartenders would go to hotels, because I think neighborhood bars were more watering holes and hotels were expected to carry a more cosmopolitan.
Yeah, and probably more financially stable to be able to afford ice as well.
100%.
Yeah,
exactly. So the Savoy Cocktail Book, if you like old drinks and want a great many recipes, most of which the builds kind of still stand the test of time, you might want to booze them up, I guess, for the modern palate. But this is a fantastic book, just as a pure old school drink reference. So that's the first one I'm mentioning. But I think we're going to talk about books that are spirit specific, ones that are put out by great bars, and other ones that have bits of history or are kind of thematically driven. So we're going to mention a great many books today, all for different reasons. And all ones that they're big helps to us.
I mean, while we're on the topic of Jerry Thomas, we can probably talk about Imbibe.
That's one of
David
my favorites.
Wondrich. Yeah. David Wondrich, probably one of the most prolific authors as far as cocktail books are concerned, I would say.
And kind of the general authority on old drinks.
Mm-hmm. The most classic style, the techniques, things that were used kind of before, pre-Prohibition and then post.
Yeah. And Imbibe is really cool because it basically focuses around Jerry Thomas's, life and career and the history of the professor, as he's called, known as. And it gives you, how he came up with, daisies, fizzes, the general builds for them, the history behind them. And just an all around, if you're a history nut, like a lot of us are, Booms especially. It's a really great read for sure.
Another thing that Wondrich does that I think is absolutely excellent is he kind of delves into not just the recipes and when they were made, but what most likely would have gone in them.
Exactly. Right. So because you don't have those sometimes listed specifically.
Right. And if it says rum, he's going to tell you probably what rum was most likely used then. So you can really replicate these drinks if you want to.
Yeah. I really like the way that he delves into that, because he actually takes it and he almost like a dissertation goes super deep into the region that maybe Jerry Thomas was in at the time of this.
Absolutely.
He's able to buff it out. It's Jerry Thomas's book, but on steroids, the complete package of everything that he would have said.
And he's an absolutely brilliant writer. He's really, really, really funny. I believe he was a professor of comparative literature before he decided to spend his time writing about cocktails. So it came from a passion of researching and writing about things, and then he just kind of turned his career into writing about cocktails.
Yep.
And now he goes all over and writes about cocktails.
Yeah. And it's really cool too, because like I'm looking at it now and he goes through, you know, like the history of the cocktails, but specifically also too notes on execution,
Mm-hmm.
like how they would have done it back in the day and maybe how it's easier to do it now in a modern bar setting, you know? So yeah, good read.
Yeah, he also wrote a book specifically on punch called Punch, which is, it's a book on essentially a fairly esoteric corner of cocktail making, where these big batch punches that would have been made for like big groups. And not only provides an amazing history on punch, but also a lot of great tips on how to truly batch out a cocktail the right way, how to make a big format cocktail very, very well.
Yeah.
Also, I couldn't find that one.
Well, he kind of goes into it in Imbibe too. And like, I'm pretty sure in like the very beginning of it, because that's where a lot of cocktails started, were punches.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Punch predates the cocktail. By
Yeah.
A damn sight.
And lots of brandy based, I noticed mainly.
Brandy and rum.
Brandy and rum.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which would have been the primary spirits on the continent
Mhm.
at
Yeah.
the time. Yeah.
It's interesting that you mentioned code. So technique has been brought up in his books already, and we've got a couple of books that like focus on technique, but you mentioned specifically in the beginning. So one of the books that I wanted to bring about was the Cocktail Codex. So behind the makers of Death and Company. Thank you.
Let me get you that.
Thank you so much. Cocktail Codex, they actually also start their books off with like highly recommending techniques and styles and ways that you can do it at home if you don't have all the same tools. Obviously, they recommend the bar tools heavily first, but as you go through it, it's
Their books are gorgeous,
with-
by the way, too.
yeah. And a total understanding of things too. They try to, if you don't have a basis of knowledge, the difference between rye whiskey and bourbon, they've got that in there. They've got fantastically styled photos of classic drinks, and then they talk about the different variations of that classic drink. So sherry cobbler is also a variant of that, is attraction. A variant of that is called a peeping tomboy. Like they go through the full build of things as well.
Yeah, it's a really great way to see how foundational cocktails are used to make new cocktails.
Yes.
And that's something that every bartender does. You know, I think that if you're in the craft cocktail world and you want to put new content out there, you have to have a fundamental understanding of about 100 to 150 different drinks, because that puts together the foundation on which you build things.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, every now and then we'll come up with something that's truly wonky and you can't really actually trace its origin. But most of the time what we do when we make new cocktails is we build on foundations and builds and flavor relationships that we understand.
Yep. Because as long as you can understand those bases, then you can, like you said, riff on them and bring it down. Like, you know, Negroni being equal parts, you know, spirit, bittering spirit, and then, you know, like sweet vermouth or Amaro and sweet vermouth.
And never banana liqueur.
Never banana
Not at all, ever.
Although I'm pretty sure in Mixology and Mayhem, there's a
There is
Negroni riff
banana.
that does have banana liqueur.
I would drink that.
Yeah, once you understand those, then you can kind of break them down and create something new.
Sure.
Which is, yeah, like you said, what all bartenders do, really.
So you said Mixology Mayhem, Dead Rabbit, the writers who write those books. There's a group of them, but they do that as well. They have a really good understanding of the basis.
Mark, I know this is one of yours that you picked, so you can talk most about it. But I will say before Mark goes on, this is probably my favorite bar book of all time.
It's so good.
The Dead Rabbit,
mentioned
Mixology and Mayhem.
Yeah.
a couple times already.
Word to those buying this book and maybe not getting into it right away, don't leave it on your coffee table for your kids to look at, because the graphic novel portion of this book is 100% very R-rated.
Very great.
And I definitely wouldn't leave it around for toddlers to check out.
So I just burned through this in like a day and a half because it's such a good read.
I read it in like a day. When I first read it,
and it's super quick to get through. There's a little bit of like a preface or an intro talking about like their methods that they do with the Dead Rabbit and how they do prep and all that. But then it gets into the story of the graphic novel section is the story of John Morrissey, who was one of the maybe one of the leaders, but also mainly a member of the Dead Rabbits in the 5 Points in New York back in the 50s.
Yeah,
because he was born in 1831. So John Morrissey, he was a kind of a hell of a guy. He in his later life became a New York senator, but before that he was a boxer, mob boss. He was considered one of the very first mob bosses. And basically the idea behind the graphic novel is that John Morrissey has come back to life as this character, the Dead Rabbit, you can see on the cover. And he has some scores to settle, we'll say.
100%. Yeah.
And like John said, very violent graphic novel, but super good read,
Fabulous
super awesome.
illustration.
Yeah, fabulous
Yeah.
illustration. It's all done in like black and white and shades of red, which is
Yeah.
super cool. And they're very
It's almost like a Frank Miller vibe.
yes, absolutely,
visually,
yeah. And Dead
a little,
Rabbit,
little cleaner looking, I think. Maybe not as not as stark black and white, but
and it's super cool too because they took a bunch of industry people and made them characters
Yes.
in the graphic
Yeah.
novel portion of it.
Wondrich is
I was
in
just
it.
going to say, David
Wondrich
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 is actually in like
He's
the first
the-
page of it.
Yeah. I think is he the first one to die?
Yes,
I think he is,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And then they've got like they've got Jim Meehan from PDT as a character in there.
Yep.
I think Jillian Vo's like the people from their own bar are in there.
Yep.
Arbor
It's really
Sanders
cool.
is, I think,
Yeah.
is in there too.
And the
Yeah.
cool thing about the recipes section of Mixology and Mayhem is that everyone at the Dead Rabbit, the owners, the general manager, they're very transparent about how they make their drinks, how they
Yep.
come up with the ideas for them.
Nothing cryptic.
Nothing
Yeah.
cryptic.
Yeah.
Yep. How they create the syrups, and there's an entire like recipe book in the back for all the syrups and shrubs they make and everything. Yeah.
I've been pretty vocal in my career about how I'm not that big of a fan of the molecular mixology movement. And it's not just because I don't work in a market that would really support it. I think that they probably would. I think the people in Fenton would probably drink whatever we put out there. But I personally don't love it because it just goes a step too far as manipulation for me.
Yeah.
And I don't need to play with texture that much.
Mm.
What I like about the Dead Rabbit and their builds is that it is almost everything that they make is relatively simple. It's just a
Yeah.
well-prepped liquid ingredient. The way they put them together is a whole nother thing. There are no tricks to it. It's just a really wonderful down to the half ounce or bar spoon understanding of the way flavors progress in a cocktail. And their
Yep.
builds, I think, are the best I've ever read.
Yep.
Without
And-
question.
Again, going back to they talk about the importance of knowing certain specific builds, like 2 spirit, 3/4 sweetener, 3/4 acid, like
Mhm.
things you have to know because they say specifically in this book too, like this is not a book to teach you how to bartend or how to become a bartender or the basics. So this might be a little more kind of like an intermediate read once
Yeah.
you have your basics down. But
It's for people who already really are into cocktails.
yeah, like John said, one of the best books you can get, I think.
Yeah, and very apropos of Jerry Thomas, considering that they're willing to give you literally everything that they would put in their
Mhm.
pistachio orgeat, for instance, or
Right.
something.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah.
Yep. And even reading through it, like I had so many ideas bouncing around in my head for our next cocktail menu just by
Yeah.
looking at their builds for their drinks too.
Yeah, it makes you immediately want to run out and get behind a bar and start making drinks
Yep.
right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Boost, give us another one.
So
I'll
another
pop one of
one.
mine up in a second.
Oh, sounds good. Well, I like the series from David Broom. So this is just his gin book, but he has gin, rum, and whiskey, and they're all titled like the spirit and then the manual because he literally jumps from the history of the drink. So how juniper was first used in kind of potions to make you feel better, and then he'll go into kind of like production, how it gets popular in the modern age. And then in the very center of the book, he will actually literally go through an entire brand of gin from either the company, how they decided they wanted to start making bottles, flavor profiles. And then he's got this thing down here, calls it flavor camps. And it's like, how well does it do in a G&T? How great is this with lemonade? What is it like in a Negroni or a martini? So the way that he's able to highlight spirits and to the point that maybe you've never tried it before, but you can imagine it because of the way that he's described it, is really cool to me. And I've used this before in writing classes for people who want to learn about gin or rum or whiskey or anything else.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one for bartenders too, because more often than not, you'll get somebody in and they say, well, I want a gin cocktail. Well, what kind of gin do you like? But they don't want the kind of gin that they like. They're here for something new.
Right.
So this gives you a really good background. And I think part of being an effective craft cocktail bartender, especially learning how to earn a guest's trust, is to really have a great deal of knowledge of not just the spirit that they're asking for specifically, but all the other ones that are comparable or might not work.
Right.
So you can give them a proper suggestion. So, say you're a 21-year-old bartender and you just came up off a service bar and you're working at a craft cocktail bar and you've never worked anywhere else. If somebody comes in and asks for a Kettle One martini and you don't know what that is, that can seriously mess with some of your currency with the guests.
Absolutely, yeah.
And having a book like that in your back pocket and having read and understood it and at least are knowledgeable about not only the brands that you have, but the ones you don't have, oh man, that's big because you can lose a guest trust rather quickly.
And the comparison part of that too, you know,
that's an industry specific comment, obviously, but
I have people who ask for like Liberator gin or something like that. We don't carry it, but I've got others and I can use this and the knowledge of what that tastes like to help accurately put them with a gin that's somewhat similar.
Yeah. And even if you don't know like specifically what the one kind of product is, as long as you know like what style of product it is, like say comparatively like a regular like, or say like a London dry gin to an Old Tom gin.
Botanical.
Yeah. As long as you know what that style kind of like tastes like inherently in your head, then you can kind of gauge your service to that as well.
I realized I just did like what Jim Price, the color analyst on the Tigers broadcast does. You know, to all you kids listening out there, when you know that nobody under the age of 40 listens to the Tigers on the radio.
Right, yeah.
Like, you know, for all you kids listening out there, this is how you do it. And you're like, Jim, there are no kids listening to you at all.
Are the Tigers on YouTube? No. Well, there it is.
I don't even know what baseball is. So another one, just kind of off of what Courtney said, and kind of speaking of something that is a very specific avenue to look at drinks within a book, is The Drunken Botanist. This book is really, really groovy because it is essentially, as it says right here, the plants that create the world's great drinks. So breaking down something like chartreuse from a botanical standpoint and from somebody who likes drinks but comes from the world of plants, Amy Stewart does an absolute brilliant job. Yeah. So she's talking not just about spirits in general, but, you know, cocoa and lemon verbena and tobacco and all of the things that possibly, you know, could influence the cocktails or do influence the cocktails and spirits that you drink. So, you know, if you want to spend 3 pages on walnut and drinks that use walnut and how walnut has, you know, created things like nocino and what that does to your drink, this is a great book. And it also teaches you more about the plant world.
Yep. Which is actually one that I ordered just this morning on Amazon because I haven't read it yet. So
yeah, she's great. And she's funny and engaging and she makes something that could be pretty esoteric really approachable.
Yeah.
I think.
100%.
I read this on a plane. I read this on one plane ride to Mexico.
Mexico. Nice.
No, I like The Drunken Botanist a lot. It's one of the things about it, like how it dives deeper into the subject matter without being specific to alcohol. Like, obviously it is. I'm sorry. I mean to say that, like you've said, the background, the history of it is really deep by going through the plants of it, because that's literally the first step you'll ever take.
Well, and she's a botanist first.
Yeah.
You know, so that kind of got her interested in cocktails, which I think is really interesting. It's not a cocktail writer writing about plants. It's a plant writer or a botanist writing about cocktails.
Right.
Yeah.
So I like that it's filtered through that.
Yeah.
Dip your toe.
Well, as you know, if you've listened to us before on this podcast, we're all very fond of tiki drinks.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Should we talk about Smuggler's Cove?
That sounds like a great idea there, Miller.
Move into that one. That realm of
So like the Dead Rabbit and the Cocktail Codex, this is a bar book put out by a great bar.
Yes.
Yeah. Fantastic. And the guys from Grand Rapids area, I want to say. Right? Martin Kate? Is it that they're from the Grand Rapids area, or they have a tiki bar?
No, they're collaborating with an artist in Grand Rapids on a conceptual project. But now I think it's pivoted. Like I think it was supposed to be something before COVID, and now it's going to be something a little different.
Oh, okay.
They're going to do it a different way. But
he's the owner of Smuggler's Cove in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where he's from though.
No, they're doing a collaboration with a group in Grand Rapids.
Gotcha.
Which is 2 hours away from us.
One of the cool things about this book is he definitely did not start in the cocktail game. Like he owns a bar now. It's a fantastic one, but he was more of just like an enthusiast, a tiki enthusiast. He had like a wonderful home bar that he had people over at all the time. And eventually he and his wife just like went whole hog and said, why don't we do, like, it's our hobby, but we love it. Why don't we just do it? And obviously he learned so much and has created like an atmosphere that really highlights the classic atmosphere of like Kon-Tiki or Trader Vic's, but like with a modern flair to it. And I mean, they still do things like they'll go to those big parties or festivals or something that you might want to say Tiki fans always go to every year. He met up with a writer whose first name is Otto, but I can't remember his last name, a German guy.
Is he also a bus driver?
Met up with him.
Did he have a monocle?
He was a magazine writer who wrote like constant information about tiki culture and bars and places all around. And you get the wide variety of tiki bars, right? You get your kind of like beachside bar that's really, you know, it's giving you sweet tropical drinks and stuff, but it's more
slinging,
like
slinging fun BS.
Yeah.
Otto
Fun
von
BS.
Stroheim.
Thank you, Otto von
There it
Stroheim.
is.
I feel really bad for forgetting his name because he is actually like a real great in the tiki history and industry. But yeah, altogether, he and Martin here and his wife do a fantastic job with Smuggler's Cove.
And it says right here that Otto came to the tiki scene via the LA punk scene,
Yeah.
which is actually kind of interesting. And I think what the book does a really good job of is showing not just tiki drinks, but tiki culture.
Yes.
And how that was and has changed. And there is kind of an old Americana thing that goes along with tiki culture. It's associated with, old cars and cool clothes and a general vibe, which does incorporate surf and rockabilly and punk music. So that is something that I really like. I mean, I like those genres of music a great deal. And there is something crazy in punk rock about tiki cocktails. They're less formal, but they're harder to make, but there aren't any rules.
Yeah.
So you can just basically rock out and do whatever the hell you feel like. But you still got to get it right.
Right.
And that's, I think I love tiki cocktails more than any other style, not just because they're really fun to drink, but because they're really hard to get right.
Yeah.
But they're also really fun.
Yeah.
Very similar to like punk music. Like there's generally only like 4 chords used by punk bands. So how do you take those chords and make something new and interesting?
Yeah, but we can agree there's crap punk music and there's good punk music, even though it is deceptively simple.
Bands like Throbbing Gristle, this book says.
Yeah, you know Throbbing Gristle?
No,
Oh, they're good. They're on my hardcore soundtrack. We'll listen to them after this while we put together some tables and chairs. We have to go back to 100% capacity today, so we've got some work to do.
And I would say, if you want to know where we personally at Relief and Resource pull a lot of our tiki cocktails for the tiki menu,
it
is
is.
this book.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Or
the Caribbean Classics by Jeff Beery.
Yep. Beach Bum Berries books.
There's just so many. And a bottle of rum is, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about that book because I kind of hate it. But I think that with the tiki menu, we're constantly curating something.
Yeah.
Along with trying to do new ones.
Because like it's punk rock, but you also have to find a balance.
Yeah.
Right. Like you can throw whatever you want in there, but as soon as one flavor's off, like too citrusy, too sweet, whatever, you've got to.
Yeah, trying to back your way out of one that's not working is really hard. You almost have to throw it away and start over.
I was actually talking to one of our regulars the other day. He's like, well, you guys are known for like whiskey mainly, but like gin, right, too? I was like, no, mainly like gin, whiskey and rum.
Yeah, rum before gin probably here.
We all love rum.
Just in terms of like looking at, you run the sales report for the year and see what we sold.
Right, yeah.
I did that recently out of the top 20 drinks, like classic drinks that we sold, 13 of them were tiki cocktails or rum-based cocktails. So I think we pour a lot of whiskey neat, but we shake a lot of rum.
Yeah,
we do.
Yeah.
I mean, our patio is called Rum Alley, so.
Rum Alley.
All right, moving on.
You want to talk about this guy here because he's another really valuable author, I think.
Yes, Brad Thomas Parsons. He's written a few different things. I brought the book on Amaro because it's one of my favorite like specialized bar books. Mm-hmm. He also wrote Bitters, which we don't have up here, but it was fantastic.
Yeah, it's downstairs.
And the biggest reason why I brought this one is because the world of Amaro can span like huge jumps and leaps of flavor. So even just understanding like regions and what they do with theirs, with their specific Amaros, how you can go with like a low ABV cocktail and just still hit really punchy flavors by using Amaros. Even making your own, which is like in the back here, he'll describe some of the things that you could do by making your own. And it's just really inclusive. It's got a huge amount of information in here, from history to flavor profiles to regions, like I said. So, and he does that with bitters as well.
To your point, I think that is one of the best books to learn how to build good quality, low alcohol cocktails.
Yeah, because they are valuable too.
Yeah, they are. And the aperitif cocktail section in that is just awesome.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Makes you want to, breeze around Italy on a moped and just drink Campari.
Legit just saw a picture of some guy on a moped.
Yeah, look how hip he looks.
I mean,
on my coolest day, I was never as cool as that guy when he gets up on a Wednesday.
As you know, I'm a big fan of the Americano. Cocktail, not the coffee drink. And that's a low ABV, vermouth and Amaro-based drink.
That's it.
Super simple, but one of my favorite cocktails, I'd say.
Let's see what else I want to mention. Okay, so I think this may be the most important book if you're a bartender or want to learn how to build drinks, this might be the most important book we mentioned today. And it's not a bar book, but it's a book that every bar aspiring person should have. And it's the Flavor Bible. So Karen Page and Andrew Dornenberg have basically broken down all of the culinary complements to literally everything. So you get these big lists of, it could be lamb and then lamb chops. And then the next thing could be macadamia nut oil, macadamia nuts, all the way through alphabetically, and literally all the things that go well with the thing that's listed. Mm-hmm. It's very, very simple, but it really shows you how flavors work together, and you can kind of get yourself in this little wormhole where oh man, I really want to do a drink with this. You look at it and you say, oh yeah, of course that works well together. And oh, that works well together too. And okay, so what if these are my two primary flavors? And you follow the next thing, and you can see these kind of Venn diagram flavors overlap. And next thing you know, you've got this kind of cocktail idea that's far more well-formed than it would have been if you didn't have this really, really great reference.
Yep.
You still have to execute, proportion, and build, but this is just a fantastic book for anybody who wants to build any kind of recipe. Yep. As a flavor reference. It can go for food if you're into like making sauces, if you are into like making barbecue rubs, or you want to try your hand at making a mole sauce, or anything culinary that you want to do, which includes drinks. Yep. You got to have this book.
They actually talk about in Mixology and Mayhem how cocktail books are important for bartenders, but also, culinary cookbooks are just as important to get those flavor pairings. And the Flavor Bible is
this is my second copy of this, actually. Well, this is my third copy of it. I have a copy at home. I have one for the bar, and then my original copy I gave to my brother, who's a sous chef. I gave it to him when he was still in culinary school. And
I've tried ordering this book on Amazon twice, and both times it's been out of stock.
Yeah.
It's a favorite for many. I do find that some, obviously, Mark, you're just talking about how, and John, you've mentioned too, that when you're looking at building the recipe of a drink, this flavor profile works really, really well. I think that sometimes, I see maybe 80 to 90% of the bartenders I know are also super good chefs, and it's not necessarily because of cookbooks, but because they understand that concept that you can build flavors together, and that this is a natural pairing with this one. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great book.
Yeah, it is a great book. Anything else you want to mention?
I've got one last one. It's
you want to talk about a Yates book too, since you really like it?
I do, yes.
Because this is a nice, wonderful little guide, I think, and you mentioned it earlier.
I did. Okay, so I apologize profusely if I'm butchering this, but I think it's Kazuo Ueda, and he has a book of cocktail techniques. He was the guy who created the Japanese hard shake, which is you're literally like a chugging locomotive with that shaker. Mm-hmm. And it's a
crazy thing to watch.
It's really crazy because it goes super fast.
And you have to really practice to get the muscle memory down to do it.
It's right every time. It's a fantastic book to start off with because it's incredibly detailed. Like, he literally has pictures of how to use a stirring stick, right, which is literally a push instead of a stir. If anyone who's tried to teach about it,
Japanese bartending is very technically
super precise, and that's true of their culinary aspects as well. A lot of Japanese culinary techniques are super detailed, very precise. And
so that just builds with this book too. It will teach you how to move your body correctly.
Exactly.
Behind a bar.
And how why this glassware works for this drink over another glassware based on temperature, or it's just incredibly detailed. It's minutia, but it would work for anyone who wants to literally get every aspect of bartending in their mind, at the very least. If you don't go through the entire book, at least page through it. It's fantastic.
And it's a little guide. It's built to be like a behind the bar type of guide.
Exactly.
And kind of page through often and reference whenever you need to kind of bone up on technique.
Yeah, that's a great one for beginners, especially. And then the other one that I wanted to mention was Last Call, also from Brad Thomas Parsons. It's not specifically a bar book. It's just kind of cool to see the inner workings of what it's like behind a bar. He literally just goes to well-known bars around the country and asks them what is your typical last drink? What do you drink after your shift, or what do you like having?
It's an industry book.
Yeah, it's an industry book, and then they'll dip into things like what an average night is at PDT or Death & Co., or why did you want to become a bartender? So it's fascinating for people who've already been in the industry most of all. But
I'm waiting for the sequel where he comes and talks to us.
last
Brad,
call. Second
we're
last
right
call.
Here. Fenton's lovely.
Come on, Brad.
Yeah, lots of lakes you can visit too.
Yeah,
I think we did it.
Yeah.
Talk about And I mean, we really just kind
There's
of
a couple more
skimmed the
up here,
surface
but- Yeah.
of all the ins and outs of cocktail making books and cocktail history books and all that fun stuff. But
I mean, you could go on about this forever. And we kind of didn't do any beer or wine books because we were just talking about, cocktail stuff primarily. But a couple other ones that I would mention, if you love wine, the Wine Bible by Karen McNeil is something that you have to have at home. It'll teach you really, really well how to go through region to region, the world's great wine producing areas, and teaches you a lot about grapes and flavor profiles. Wine Folly is another one. The author's name escapes me, but her online access is really wonderful. She'll break down every grape for you. And then the Michael Jackson Scotch book, not that Michael Jackson, the Scotch guide that's updated every year is great if you're into UK whiskey, because it's a brilliant catalog of nearly all of them that you could possibly want to drink.
Honestly, I think I've got a couple copies now, but yeah, great book.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No Mr. Boston talk today. If you have any of those kicking around, bring them here, because I've kind of got this idea where I'm going to try to collect a Mr. Boston for as many years as possible. Not because they're useful, but just because they're kitschy and stupid. And I think it would be funny to have as many of them as possible.
That's such a you thing to do.
Yeah. Well, okay, so the Saturn died,
about all
right?
these,
I had the
like,
Saturn. It was almost classic car age, right? And it was going to take it to the back to the bricks and classic car shows and just pull up next to the Shelby Mustang and be like, what's up, dude? You want a Saturn hat? I bought 5. And like get my $1 hot
Classic
dog.
plates.
And now that I can't do that because it finally died, I'm going to try to collect Mr. Boston books and never use them.
Fair enough.
Ever.
Sarcasm potato.
All right. So thank you for joining us. Look forward to our next episode where I read from a Mr. Boston 1974 book for 45 minutes. And Mark and Courtney stress drink next to me.
We're both going to drink probably an entire bottle of scotch. While we do it.
Absolutely.
Each.
Yeah. So for Mark and Courtney, I'm John. Thank you very much. See you soon.